I know immediately what you're thinking. This intro is all kinds of messed up. Why do we have Terminator 1 title crawl but now we're seeing the start of Terminator 2? Well, if you did think that, then I hope you're going to love this video. Last year was the 40th anniversary of the release of Terminator, which prompted me to pick up a HK aerial model kit by Pegasus Hobbies. Halfway through building that, I thought, you know what, I want to build a Terminator diorama. But what would that look like? Well, let's take a look at the future war sequence of Terminator 2 for inspo. Whoa. Let's hold it up and take it back a second. Stop. Okay, so this is the sequence that I want to recreate in the diorama. That truck, this hunter killer. Let's go. So first up, I wanted to lay the land of how this might work in reality, so I pulled out the old school pen and paper and went to work, brands not affiliated. To break up the scene, I thought a central wall through the middle and some rubble covering it, all to give it that dystopian, ruined future look that's so iconic of Terminator. Now, I knew the majority of this build would be made using foam boards, so you can see me cutting up the horizontal walls with this hot wire cutter. Back to the pen and ruler then. I wanted to lay out a template for how this facade might look. And then went back to work with the hot cutter. And yes, classic. I went off the template freehand and didn't follow it. So in the end, I just made it up. So I drew on some concrete brick outlines and then went over them with my hobby knife and created separation with the end of a hobby file. Next, I put on a layer of black primer to give it that depth of shadows. I used the Vallejo Black Model Colors primer, which goes on like a dream, thinned with a bit of water. Next, I went over the exposed brick faces with some grey Tamiya paint. I used these matchsticks to create some exposed concrete foundation sticking out the top of the tall pillars. And then back to the Tamiya grey to cover off the exposed brick again. So here we have all the pieces so far, the pillars, the central walls, and now onto the texture paints I'll be using. I picked up this Ammo MIG asphalt for the road, this Terraform thin concrete for the vertical walls, this brick dust pigment for a bit of depth, and these miniature skulls which will give it that apocalyptic Terminator feel. And one of my go-tos for creating dirty environments is this Citadel Agrax Earthshade. And finally, some terrain scatter from Javis Scenics, coupled with a few of these offcuts cut down to the size of bricks for dotting throughout the ruins. And with all that ready, let's go. To stick down the ruin building, I used some regular PVA white glue and then had some matchsticks sticking out the bottom of the scenery, coupled with some of these hairbands that I stole from my wife to help keep everything in place. These extra platforms I'm sticking at the back will be used to hold the HK aerial and provide a solid foundation for the rubble to stick to, and back with the PVA glue and matchsticks to hold this in place, using the heavy asphalt texture rather than what it's made for, just as a weight. And let's leave that set. And now, using the asphalt for what it is made for, I stirred it up good and then used this mini tool to spread it evenly across the road section. Whilst we wait for that to dry, I went back to the ruined building and used this thin concrete by Terraform to create a bit of texture, also remembering to replace these hairbands before my wife notices. Spreading on this thick layer of concrete to the vertical surfaces, being sure to avoid the exposed brick face. Back to the good old paintbrush, and it's the turn of the pavement to get the primer treatment. To create a bit more texture, I dented up the wall with my hobby knife to make it look like bullet holes. Thinning out some more Tamiya grey, I went back over the pavement, remembering at the last minute to mask off the road. And then added some more colour to the exposed holes on the walls. A lighter grey was used to create depth on the walls and holes. I went over the cracks in the pavement with some dirtied up dark paints and similarly over the exposed concrete brickwork to give it that layer of depth. For the rest of the ruins, the rubble in particular, I used this sculptor mould, and having mixed up the correct ratio in the classic American college party cups, I spread it all over the diorama as if this building had been destroyed. This pillar helped me give the reason that this strange hole in the doorway exists, and not just my incompetence to follow a template. I dotted these bricks about in as random fashion as possible. And then went back to the black, and this time it's the turn of the sculptor mould to get primed. And with all that done, I used my airbrush from light grey to go over that rubble. I decided to add these road marks using some Tamiya yellow and masking, which went about as badly as it possibly could. The mistakes continue, where I forgot to glue these skulls down before priming up the model, so I thought I'd just try and stick them into the sculptor mould with mixed success. I then had to carefully go back to each individual skull, prime them, and then paint them white. That was fun. Given the road its treatment of scatter, I first went over it with some Mod Podge before just heaping on the scatter. There is probably a much more technical way of doing this, but I don't know it. I use this pretty great streaking brush to outline some of the concrete for a bit of extra depth. And next was again a bit of dirty paint to give the destroyed brickwork a bit more depth and colour. I then used the light dust thinner to sink the paint into the model. Finally, a great spread of this Agrax earth shade is put over the diorama to dirty it up a bit. And you can see the final pics of it here, and I was pretty happy how it all came out. Onto the final scene assembly itself then. So we start with the foundation which we've just built, and then I brought in the two models which will make this scene pop. First off, the resistance jeep, which you can watch me build in its own dedicated video here. And also the HK aerial model, which is also on the channel, and you can watch that here. To give it that extra oomph, we're going to need more lights. To set up the Jeep, I drilled this hole through the base. And struggled massively to thread through the wires to the underneath. But I did remember to replace the hood, which kept falling off. Great, it works. Next is a bit of plasma in flight from the rear gunner on the truck, which will be central to the scene. I used these great filaments which I saw Boily Hobby use, albeit in a much more rudimentary and not as effective way that he does it. Finally, I superglued up the HK aerial in its place, fed the wires down the outside of the model because I forgot to hide them, primed and painted up the base to finish it off, and with that, the final cut was ready to go. Before this video ends, I just wanted to say thanks so much for watching. Please like and subscribe to stick around, as I have loads of movie inspired builds planned for 2025. Thanks very much for watching, and good night.